Good morning, everyone. We'll go and get started. Welcome to the Task Work-Based Learning webinar series. Today's presentation will spotlight the resource virtualjobshadow.com. If you're attending this webinar, you have received an email from Eventbrite that included details on how to locate materials from today's training and a link to the transition repository. By 6 p.m. today, a recording of the presentation, as well as any related resources, will be located in the Task Transition repository titled WBL Spotlight, virtualjobshadow.com, or by keyword search Spotlight. While in the repository, you can also view resources from the several webinars we are conducting this spring by using the keyword search 2021. Yesterday's email also explained how you could become a member of the task force team by completing the post-webinar survey. For those wanting to join the task force team, today's attendees will need to complete a brief survey. You will then be added to the team and will be mailed a task force gift. So look for that post-webinar survey in your inbox today at 2 p.m. Now I'd like to introduce you to your presenters for this webinar, Karen Carson and Stephen Bell.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. All right. All right, so welcome to today's webinar. On behalf of Striven Media, the creators of virtualjobshadow.com, welcome. I'm so pleased to be joined by Karen Carson, and I will let her share a little bit about herself here in just a second. But you know, today's topic is timely and very important. Supporting career exploration, transitions, and work-based learning across South Carolina. Myself, I have 21 years in education. My background includes being a special education teacher at the high school level for 7 years, a special programs administrator at the district level for 10 years, and again, another 4 years at a regional level. And also I've served as an adjunct faculty for a number of online courses. And Karen, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I turned off my screen because I'm having internet, so if I break up, I'm apologizing ahead of time. Basically, I started out teaching many years ago, 7 years as an adjunct faculty at 3 different schools, universities in Miami, and then went into college textbook publishing and ran a statistics list for 13 years. So there was a lot of background in research and conferences and learning about what people do in the classroom all the time. So it's very exciting to be connected to faculty still and working in education.
That's great. Thanks, Karen. So today our objectives are to give you an overview of virtualjobshadow.com, to also make connections to special education transition requirements in South Carolina. You're the experts on that, but we want to make those connections from virtualjobshadow.com. Also explain how virtualjobshadow.com specifically can meet the work-based learning requirements that you are challenged by. Also, we'll go into a bigger picture, a high-level view of differentiated instruction, specially designed instruction, and explicit instruction inside the platform. And then we'll open it up for discussion and questions at the end. So just if you have a question along the way, if you could just jot it down or even put it in the chat box, but we will have a time at the end to address those. So as you know, I don't have to tell you anything. It's a world of change. The last year, in my role as a school district administrator overseeing basically 35 counties worth of special education programming. The world changed so dramatically in education and we had to pivot. I know that word is probably old now, but we tried to pivot as best we could. Really, pandemic pedagogy is what we started calling it because it was a good way to summarize it. There was so much upon us, but that we were shifting and making those changes. But, you know, a lot of what didn't change was, you know, IDEA, IEPs, transition planning requirements, and compliance, as you well know. Our goal was to keep learning the constant, and I accepted the role as Director of Learning Solutions with Striven Media in July of this past year, 2020. And what I appreciated is that really the platform is designed for any kind of instructional model you're trying to implement. Traditional, hybrid, remote, or all three, because we know that systems are being tasked to pivot, sometimes even in the same week. And certainly students are in each of these tracks as far as how your service delivery model is at times. This created significant challenges around FAPE And considerations of FAPE are always in the forefront of our minds as special educators and administrators and service delivery providers. Certainly IDEA always emphasizes, establishing the needs and the eligibility criteria first, and then defining your specially designed instruction as a defined service, but not tying it to a location necessarily. And this presented enormous challenges as the pandemic kind of proceeded to impact us in our service delivery model and eliminated a lot of what we could. Sorry, I should have turned off my notifications. Sorry, pandemic really halted a lot of what our work-based learning routines and established relationships were. So at this time, I want to hand it over to Karen to share a pretty detailed view of virtualjobshadow.com's solutions. But as she's transitioning and as I share the screen with her, I just want you to know that there's so much more than we can show today. We're going to give you a high-level view. And we apologize for any internet connectivity issues. We'll just see how far we get before we run into lag.
All right. Thanks so much, Steve. So I'm just going to go through some of the highlights, the most important aspects. We can always do a deeper dive demo afterwards. You can contact us. I'm happy to share more. But here you'll see is our landing page for instructors for the platform for Virtual Job Shadow. One of the important things I think is the local links here where you can actually add specific places you want your students to have quick access to. So this is important just from the get-go. And then this is just a career profile we're highlighting. This changes every few days, but really the heart and soul of our program is here in Career Central. And we're very proud of the fact that we are as inclusive and equitable as possible. We have over 300 of these career profiles. We're constantly building our bank. We have 2 to 5 new ones a month. But we organize all of these according to clusters, the 16 plus energy. We organize according to education. And here's another place where you can see that we focus a lot on things that are not just college-bound opportunities. You can find so many different opportunities for people with just a high school degree or things that are just required for certification programs. So many, many examples. The other place that's important to see is that we have a bank of career profiles highlighting people with disabilities who are successful in their careers. And so this bank is really important, we feel, for students to be able to find people like them who are able to go out in the world and be successful. So the one that I'm going to just highlight really quickly is the child care worker. She has Down syndrome, and please, again, do not rate the quality of the video or anything like that based on the demonstration here. But each of these career profiles contains about a 3 to 5 minute shadowing video. And we feel this is super distinctive for us in helping you be able to offer students opportunities and exposure to careers beyond just being able to walk in and watch someone in a day. We are able to highlight, for instance, this, the girl's name is Kelly. Kelly's creating the duties that she has on a daily basis, carrying those duties out, how she works with children in the childcare place, why she chose this job, what things are really important to her, how it makes her feel about being able to go in and have a job every day that is really meaningful. So this is just one example of the shadowing video. And each of these shadowing videos also includes a Q&A. So we typically have 3 to 15 Q&As at the end where we go back and ask questions that may not have come up within the day in the life. So this is one example. We worked with Virginia. We went to the school and filmed people working there. Steve can talk a little bit more about this, about how you can access some additional videos of people with disabilities in these careers. But we, make sure that we include closed captioning in English and Spanish, and we also include Spanish and English transcripts for all of these career profiles. And so again, this bank of careers highlighting people with disabilities we feel is super distinctive to what we're able to offer. The other thing that we organize by in these is industry and then interest, work importance. Now, the interest on the RISEC interest structure, this category and the work importance locator category connect back to 2 of the 4 assessments that we offer. We offer 4 assessments in total, 2 versions of a career clusters interest survey, and then the ONET interest profiler and the ONET work importance locator. And I'll briefly show you that in a minute, but I just wanted to highlight that these categories will link back from the results of the students' responses on those assessments. So another really easy way for them to kind of dig around and explore things they may not have been aware of that they really might be interested in. We also, here again, are our newest careers. And then when students' favorite careers, they can always click here and go in to see those things that they remembered that they really liked. Now, if I go back in, I'm going to go back to the career profile for Kelly. And in this career profile, you can see there are a number of things that students can do here. They can favorite a career if they really like it, as I mentioned. They can create a playlist of careers that they're really interested in. Each career profile offers a pop quiz. Now, these are 5-question pop quizzes. It's the same quiz every time, but it will not tell them the correct answer. It will tell them if they get it right. But this allows you, if you wanted, for instance, to assign a particular career profile to a student in a flex lesson, which is another really distinctive quality about our program, then you could do that. And that way, make sure that they've watched all of the videos. The career journal is super important. This allows students to rate their interest in the career, take notes about the career, talk about the salary, make sure that they write down these things that they know are going to be important, the things that they like and that they don't like. And then this can be saved, and then you can access it as well as an instructor. So the student is creating this bank of information about each of the things that they like. But they're pulling that information for that career journal. They're getting it from all of these other categories that we provide under the career profile. Now, beyond the videos, which in total typically take no more than about 10 minutes to watch, all of the shadowing and all of the Q&A videos, there is also a career description that provides all the different duties that they're going to have in that job, different, kinds of jobs they could get, what a real work schedule could be like, if there are any kinds of, injuries or illnesses they might get. And here's the required education with a background, any kinds of licensing certifications they may need, the training, and important qualities. And this is another way they can really decide, am I really going to be interested in this particular kind of job? Our earnings link directly back to whatever state that student's located in. So if they're in South Carolina, it will default to South Carolina and compare the state wages to the national wages. And the future outlook is the next 10 years of the job. The additional links is really nice. This is something that is also a way to kind of highlight that we pull from other resources, and you too can do that in the flex lessons, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But we provide a ton of additional information, places for students to link out and get more information about the career. Now, we also link where it's relevant to ONET and to Career One Stop and some other sites. So again, this is a really great, organized, curated space for students to find more information about a particular career they're interested in. The college search will, again, default not only to the state where the student is located, but it also defaults to only those schools and universities or even certification programs they're going to offer the courses necessary for that particular career. Now, they can also click on any of these colleges and it's going to take them to all of the information that is available about that college. Now, they can link out and apply online. They can also see, what the tuition and rates are going to be, all of the important statistics, and even what those majors may be that they want. And if those majors have subcategories, we'll explain what that subcategory is and even link to one of our career profiles so that they can see more information about what that subcategory entails. They can favorite a college and then they can compare colleges they favorited here, which is really nice because anytime they favorite anything, the colleges, a job, anything, there is a record of that kept and they can pull that in an activity tab. So they don't ever lose any of that information they found and they can export it as well into a spreadsheet and continue to reference that even if they're not in the program. The other thing that we feel is really important is when beyond just offering colleges for students, they can go in and look specifically for certification programs, specifically for things that are less than 2 years. So there is a bountiful amount of ways that students can see that it isn't necessary just to have a 2 or 4 year degree in order to have a successful future. So a lot of opportunity available here. The other thing available is the job and internship search that does link into directly to Indeed.com. Now, again, it's going to default to whatever location the student is in, and they can even go into an advanced search and narrow down to, within a particular time frame that they want to search. And it will pull those careers up that are relevant from Indeed.com. Now, this was 2 days ago. If they click on this, it's going to take them directly to the Indeed website, and they're going to see a job description and even be able to apply online if they want. The internship search is the same. They can default, it defaults, and then it will search for anything available through Indeed. The work-based learning board, please remember this. This is a super important part for you. this is where you create anything you want your students to see. So I think it looks like Steve maybe created this one yesterday for you guys. But basically anything that is available locally, anything that you feel that your students, if you have a career fair coming up or you have a state site you want to link them to, this is where you add those different careers. So your students have access to local apprenticeships, internships, or just things that you feel like you want to cater towards some of their interests or particular skills. So the work-based learning board is there. And then the last thing is the related career. So there's always a way they can continue to kind of dig in and look for things that would be connected to what that one career profile might have been. So childcare, adult literacy, all kinds of opportunities here. Now, I mentioned the assessments. I'm going to briefly show you where those are. The 4 assessments are also available in Spanish. We have a full-length career clusters interest survey that has about 102 questions. And the nice thing about this is that it does offer emojis rather than numbers. So it's easier for them to just see if, to respond with whether they might like something or not. This icon will read aloud to them. And really importantly, we are compatible with any of the platform readers. So JAWS, things like that. If you need that, we are compatible with that. Now they can come back and finish the survey later. But the nice thing here is that the survey will link back to specific categories that are relevant based on their responses. So they can watch a cluster overview video here. And just so you can see, our overview videos kind of highlight the quality of the video that we provide. We produce all of these. We film them ourselves, and they are proprietary. But you can see this would give an indication of the different kinds of careers available in this particular cluster. And back to this, again, it will link them into that entire cluster if they want to go back and kind of look through those jobs that are connected to their responses on that assessment. So we have 2 of those career cluster profile interest surveys, the full length, that's 102, and then we have a briefer one. We offer a K-5 platform, and in that one, this is the actual interest survey we use. It's about 85 questions, and it is just a little bit lower level, the level of the writing, the tasks that are provided. So it offers, sometimes if there's a little more difficulty in reading level, things like that, this is going to be the more appropriate interest survey, but it takes them back to the same place. The ONET Interest Profiler is a little different. It has a number of tasks that they're going to respond to, whether or not they might be interested in these particular things. Again, a different way for them to think about what they might like to do. They can come back and finish this later. And again, it's going to link them into those categories that are best connected to their responses and their interests. So if they are artistic, these may be the best kinds of jobs for them to consider. Now, the final assessment that we offer here is the ONET Work Importance Locator. And again, this is going to ask students to watch a little video to explain what they're looking for, but then they can place these work value cards on the most important things that they think, that it's important to them about a job. So they can work through this and respond appropriately. And then once they've finished, it will link them to those categories based on what they think is important in a job to them. So specifically, if they like a sense of achievement is important, it will link them there. So these are all really great ways for students to record and continue to have access to what they like, what they don't like, what kinds of careers may be of interest to them. And then they can also create their resumes and cover letters within the system. Again, an important way for them to keep up with, how they're actually progressing and what they are wanting to apply to. So you can see these can be downloaded in a Word or a PDF. And in both the resume and cover letter, there are helpful hints and different question marks above the screen so they can know what they need to fill out here. I'm not going to go into too much more depth. I just want to make sure that you're aware of these different options where they can select an education plan. Any of the schools they favorited, they can then select the top 3 or the top 3 careers they've liked and save that. And then you will have access to that. You have access to the resumes and cover letters. And another significant aspect here is goal setting, because sometimes you may have them set SMART goals. Well, they can do that in here. In the short and the long-term goals, they can always rename these, they can edit these, and you will have access to everything that they've put in here as well. Now, I'm getting to the part where you can actually pull together this information, which we know is super important to be able for reporting functions. If you type a student name in, you can always see how much time they've spent in the system, how many career profiles they've looked at, how many videos they've watched. And we have a My Plan that actually shows you a little mini IEP of what their post-secondary education plan is, their top colleges, careers, their short and long-term goals, any of the assessment results that they've taken, and also their cover letter and their resume. So that's an easy one-stop shop to pull some of this work that they've done together for you to have on hand when you meet with them. But you can always see anything a student has been working on, even if they started an assessment and didn't finish it. And you can always export these results. Assignments, I'm going to get to in a second, but career journals they've kept, any work that they've done in the system whatsoever, you will have access to, and you can see exactly what they favorited, what kind of video it was, all of this. Now, there's a larger reporting overview feature where you can always see, adjust a time frame for when you want to see information about when they're in, how many things are being accessed. And then you can group students however you'd like. So if you wanted to make an assignment specific to one particular student, you can. But if you have a few students who seem specifically interested in health careers, for instance, you can categorize those together, organize them, and create specific assignments just for them. Now, the flex lessons is really the most, I think, easiest way for you to cater specific kinds of guidance for certain students and integrate your own curriculum. We feel that's really important that we kind of play well with others. We allow people to pull any kind of curriculum you already like, any kinds of videos that you already really use all the time, and integrate them into an assignment. Now, we've created these 21 lessons here that kind of go over typical content that you would need to address. One of the things I didn't mention earlier is that we do have, and this is where I, talking about these sort of soft skills where it's mentioned here, I want to make sure I show you that we have a huge bank of life skills videos. Now, these are about 30 seconds to a minute and a half long. You can see here, this is the number 266 we have, but we're building a ton more. We're having a launch for a new topic called Tough Conversations soon. But you can see in the disability spotlight, even some of the different kinds of important topics that are covered by different people that we've interviewed over the last few months. These are really new. There's nothing in our system that is dated. We launched about 7 years ago. So anything that has needed to be updated, we have, but then most of what we have is very, very recent and relevant. Back into the reporting, the flex lessons. So the reason I wanted to bring those up is because you can integrate any of those life skills videos, any of those career profiles, anything in the system into a specific lesson. So the one I kind of want to go through with you briefly is the careers and your interests. This kind of gives you a sense of how you can assign an assessment in the beginning. This is a student view. All of the ones we've created follow about the SWIM format. And so we introduce key terms. This is one of the videos. So you can see we've integrated one of those life skills videos to kind of give them an introduction to what the topic is. We've created a quiz. Now you can edit the quiz that we've done. You can create a quiz from scratch. You can do anything pretty much you want. You can create a survey. We've provided a reading for them to kind of look through what they want to do, like things to think about. And then we've written another quiz. Now it will automatically grade as well. You can select whether you want to give them a particular answer, how you want that to be presented. And then we've integrated the career clusters interest survey for them to then, once they finished, write a response to. So again, a really nice place for you to keep all of this information, anything students are writing about, in one place, and then pull those in a reporting feature. So you have all this different content. You can actually set a minimum word count if you want here, and a submitted assignment. So this is all available here. Now you can edit that if you want, and that's very simple. All you need to do is clone it. It's going to show up as the first thing under the My Lessons tab. And then you can just go in and do anything you want with it. You can kind of move any activities around if you want. You can completely delete something if you feel like it's a little bit too much. And you can also edit. And so if you look even in this quiz, here's where you can see you can change the instruction, you can change whether it shows the answers, you can change the questions, you can create all kinds of quizzes that you want using these functions. And so The big part here, though, and Steve is going to go back over this once more, though, is that you can continue to build out assignments based on what you need students to do, what kinds of artifacts you need to create from students. You can assign a video here by sending a link. If you have a different assessment you want them to do, you can actually link out to that assessment here and then ask them to write a written response based on that external assessment. And you can create tasks for them. If there are certain things they need to complete within a certain month or a particular time frame, you can create tasks for them to check off as they go through. So really the flexibility in this flex lesson is you're being able to integrate all kinds of content from not only our platform, which is here, and you can see it's very easy even to pull our videos and to find them by just clicking filtering by a topic or a particular term, and then you can just click and choose which videos you want them to watch. But again, it's mostly about just being able to create your own lessons, create the guidance you need for individual students or groups of students, however you like. And then when you publish, you can see here, it's really easy just to then assign a lesson. And you can see here, this is where you just name it whatever you'd like. And you can set a due date for students, and then you can decide whether they need to do things in the same order, if you want it to be graded. And again, here's where you can choose a particular group or an individual or a couple of individuals to assign a lesson to. And within this, then you can actually see what they've started. You can see when they finish, what their final grades are, and you can see individual activities, how much they've completed, and leave notes for them. Now, this will link back to a Google account if they want, but we offer things like single sign-on. We'll just talk to you about that when we get more deeply connected to how you need to provide all of this. The playlist builder allows you to create specific playlists of videos that you want students to watch, and you can even assign that in a flex lesson. And now we're back to the local links and the work-based learning board. And so really the biggest aspect here is that everything a student does, whether it's in a flex lesson or not, they are going to continue. This is actually what a student sees when they look at this activity tab. They have access to anything they've started, anything they've finished, any career goals. They can download any of this content. If they favorited a career, they can even export this into a spreadsheet so they don't lose that information that they've worked through, the college information as well, the resumes, all of this is still available to them. And that really is, it's sort of a quick and down and dirty, but Steve, I'm going to hand it back over to you if you want to just take over the screen sharing. That really is uh, sort of the highlights that we have through here.
Great. Yeah, let me see if I can get the screen share back up. Okay. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. So can someone confirm they're seeing my screen?
I'm not seeing it, Steve.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Karen. Very high level overview, lots of information. If you haven't seen our platform before, excuse me, for some of you who may be customers already or who are very familiar or had a demo or understand our platform, you recognize the features and the power in each component. But I do want to kind of unpack, the big picture for South Carolina as we understand it from our vantage point. And being a former special ed teacher and director of special programs, I start looking for information. South Carolina has a great amount of information. Task has amazing resources. And so I started trying to connect the dots myself between our solutions and what you need. So the big picture is essentially this diagram, very detailed. There's lots of things that go into each actual cell or block of information here, but let's just unpack this a little bit in terms of how virtualjobshadow.com meets those needs. Of course, also part of the bigger picture is indicator 13 and compliant IEPs. This information is, for me, it's like the elevator conversation. It really elevates the dialogue to what are the biggest possible things we're going to need to have in terms of a compliant IEP and transition process. This, of course, came from resources in your state page, the South Carolina Department of Ed. And I did, for future reference, I did put the links at the bottom for you after the webinar if you're accessing this deck later. Likewise, evidence of employability skills. This is huge, right? For so many students, we have lots of activity, lots of inputs into their experience, but we have to have evidence, right? We have to have the evidence of employability. So South Carolina has a very rigorous approach, and I'm very glad that you do, because I think a lot of our states could take a page out of South Carolina's book in terms of the requirements that you have for students. And I just want to maybe call attention to your differentiator here, completing at least 360 hours of work-based learning and training. That, in my experience, I have not seen that in my own work world in Washington State, where I'm from. We did not have that component, and I think it's a really vital component. Again, evidence of pre-employment preparation, work-based learning training must be aligned to the student's interests, preferences, post-secondary goals, and individual graduation plan. I think you recognize in our platform that that would be something that would be pretty attainable in the features that we have that will allow you to kind of call that out. Again, I have the link at the bottom if you ever need to go back and find that. So flex lessons, Karen really hit on this, but flex lessons are a vital component to work-based learning. And we already have customers in South Carolina who are using flex lessons to address their needs for work-based learning. And so I just want to spell out maybe some of the reasons why. First of all, they can establish the time they think it'll take to complete that lesson. And then they know that that's the estimated time that they're going to be, that student or those groups of students are going to be accumulating hours towards their requirements. Second thing is you can design for the individual, the class, or a group. You may start out with a lesson that you assign to an entire group, and then you may go back and clone that lesson and make it into a more rigorous lesson for, say, an individual who needs more rigor. You may go back and modify it for a student who needs less rigor. And all the while, you are tracking the amount of time that student and the activities they are completing through that flex lesson. Not to mention reporting, right? That's huge, because when you go back to say who did what, when, and how, and why, you have all the information. But if you don't have sophisticated reporting features, you really can't go back and generate the evidence you need, which is, of course, you need evidence in a couple of ways, but you need evidence for external compliance reasons, for a quality IEP meeting, a transition plan meeting. But you also need it for the student. A lot of times we forget that the number one consumer of information about themselves is not the system, it's not the parent, it's not the teacher, etc. It's the student, him or herself. They're the ones who need to see that evidence that they are planning, that they have a pathway, and that they have goals. So I wanted to call attention to that, because I think many times in especially special education, there's a lot of adult mediated work and information presented on behalf of a student, and that's appropriate, but we always strive to make sure that the student is fully engaged and empowered. I guess one last thing I would say, it's pretty obvious it's an online portfolio of sorts, but we don't technically call it that. All the work that the student does, as Karen said, is recorded and I call it the back end or backlit in the system, so that you can seamlessly pull together reports in the click of a button. That's really helpful when you're trying to come to an IEP meeting or do the prep work before an IEP meeting, and you want to engage the student around their own successes and strengths and personal preferences. It's already baked into the platform. Another thing, and you already showed this, Karen, but I do want to call attention to it again, or commemorate it in the deck for others who might not have been on the call. You really have to know what you want to accomplish with your students, but at least you have the tools to post and communicate effectively with your students. I think it's vital that you have these options integrated into the platform, and just know that as you use them, you'll develop your own kind of way of doing things and fluency in terms of the features. In general, differentiation is all throughout the platform. As you probably already well know, you can differentiate things like the content, the process, the product. You can also vary according to the student's readiness, interest, and learning profile. So as Karen mentioned, within the Flex Lessons, there are currently 17 activity types. The top ones are in the blue, and they represent built-in features that are in virtualjobshadow.com. And by clicking on each one, you can access that interface. But then also these green ones are the external content. And as Karen mentioned, you might have favorite videos, you might have other free resources, you might have district, local, or state resources. You might have a number of things, whether it's scholarships or important, third-party providers or nonprofits that have developed content that you want to feature. go ahead and do that in Flex Lessons. As Karen said, we play nice with others, and we really feel like it's an important component to the platform, because to limit you to what you can provide to students is essentially putting equity in jeopardy. What is the big picture for South Carolina? Again, sorry about that, slide now over here. So one of the things I'm challenged by, besides my slide deck advance, is our ability to see the big picture, but also dial it down to the specifics. So in this picture, you're going to see transition assessments. This is your South Carolina roadmap, but the way we solve it is, for example, the CCIS, the CCIS-EZ, the work importance locator, the interest profiler, and these provide personalized results that are baked into the equation for students. So if they're in the platform, you're already personalizing their results. So that's an important component. Moving on to PLAFs. We all love acronyms in special education. This is one of my favorites because it really is an important component. When you talk about the present levels of academic and functioning performance, this is important because I think for so many of us, we look at the academics as kind of the end all be all, but the functioning of the student, it takes into the context of the student, the strengths of the student, the challenges of the student. And if you have a student on our platform, you're going to have robust information, and you're going to get that through career interest surveys, quizzes, written responses, surveys that you create that are custom, and all the 17 features that you have at your disposal in a Flex lesson. So that's a very important piece of the process. In terms of the big picture for post-secondary considerations, keep in mind, you can start this with a student who's in 6th grade, and that will be a cumulative running record of all their activity in the platform. If you have a student moving to your district from out of state, well, what do you know? They're going to jump in there and you're going to have the running record of their activities as soon as they're in the platform. So things like college searches, career central activity, life skills videos, job and internship searches are just the kind of the highlight reel, but that being able to print that post-secondary My Plan at the end of the day is really vital as you go to, especially the annual IEP. There is no end of things to occupy your time as a professional, and students are challenged when they don't have enough time to process. So a lot of what you can do is front load, get things evidence printed so that they can reflect. You can even assign them a task of reflecting for the upcoming IEP meeting. And then when the student goes to that meeting, they're prepared. Likewise, when we have SMART goals, the ability to develop goals is an important feature. And one not to be taken lightly for our students who are quite often heavily mediated by the adults and professionals in their life. It is a really important skill for them to develop the ability to set a goal, understand goal-directed behavior, self-directed behavior, accomplishments. And this is an excellent part in a platform where you could do this annually. You could do it several times in a year. You could do it for each class the student has. There's no end to the amount of goals they could be setting. But the important part is that we are able to track that over time, and the student can reflect on those short-term and long-term goals each year or along the way and see their successes. Sometimes students have a goal of just setting a goal, and we know that. Accommodations and modifications. This really, the state level framework that we're in, within virtualjobshadow.com, we didn't say it yet, but we have a number of accessibility features, like Karen mentioned, the screen readers, JAWS and NVDA. But also just the interface is very user friendly and intuitive. It tracks the students' activities kind of seamlessly. So it might not mean as much when they're clicking something they like, but when they get accumulated resources after their activity in the platform, it's a really compelling thing that you don't have to go back and task someone to find something. It's really already baked in that it's there. And then, of course, you can, through Flex Lessons, adjust the rigor and select the amount of content that you would want to have them exposed to. Assessments, accommodations, modifications, specialized instruction and related services. This is really where I think our platform shines in terms of your ability, puts you in control of designing, especially designed instruction really should be designed, and it should be different than what they could get, say, in a general ed setting only. So you are in control of that in terms of Flex Lessons and where you draw the line between what one student needs, what a group of students need, and what a class needs. So I would like to say I came up with this all on my own, but essentially I looked at the task topical brief for student engagement, and it kind of inspired me. And then I wanted to add one little piece, and I feel like, their involvement is important, but it's often passive if the student is always being directed or fed what to do and how to do it. We definitely want to engage them at a very high level, help them own, for example, their goals or their interests or their college search, their job search. But at the end of the day, we're working from strengths-based perspective, and we want it personalized, and that's going to happen in virtualjobshadow.com at all times for the student. But we really want it active and self-directed, and I just would say that's more empowerment than engagement. So I would encourage people to look at what we're using for resources that, how much of it is being done by the adult world or the adults, and how much is being done by the students. So the one way to summarize that is to think, when you think of focusing on, who's doing all the lifting or the work, we really want to encourage systems where the students are doing the lifting, the majority of the lifting. And of course, there are times when we are spotting or helping assist with the lift. So career exploration that just involves students or engages them can really be surpassed by evidence of empowerment. And that's where I think Virtual Job Shadow shines. So I would say look for the verbs. So I went looking for verbs in South Carolina in terms of transition process, and I found some very powerful content, but I just wanted to put it in here to show you that all of the words that are green, I feel, are the action components, verbs, and you can do all of these in virtualjobshadow.com. You can have students evaluate their interests, identify personal educational employment goals, describe their personal values and interests. Every one of these can be done in a flex lesson. And there's more, right? Career exploration process, the exploration part, right? So can they utilize technology? Can they visit workplaces and interview an employee about their jobs and tasks and roles? Possibly not, because of the pandemic. So what we would do is say, what can you do? You could access the job site through the virtualjobshadow.com job shouting videos. And then other things that that these students are going to be doing as you are designing their transition plan and resources that they need. Career preparation, this is another list, but again, how are they demonstrating their understanding? How are they describing and exhibiting appropriate knowledge of dress, hygiene, grooming for an interview, etc.? These are important components to being employable and getting a job and keeping a job. And again, it's not exhaustive, but this is certainly a great list that I found. And in terms of career exploration, they're really getting employability skills along the way. I think it's more of a dosing feature where you need to kind of incrementally build content so students are exposed to it, they explore it, but then they become empowered and master it and make it their own learning. And I think a lot of that comes through a longer runway. A lot of our students need a longer runway, and you know that. They need more time, more processing time. So from a universal design perspective, and this is from this particular resource is from the CAST, and the National Center on Accessing the General Curriculum is where you can find this. It's linked there. And this is probably familiar to most of you. And I think we struggle because for a lot of our students, making the world of work or the world of employment accessible is what the transition plan and process is all about. Yet what we find through our data is we struggle mightily because we probably have had gaps, or we haven't had students master or own the lifting themselves in certain ways. So when they get out and they go and try to find that job, or they try to enroll in their post-secondary education option, if they don't have significant success early, they have failure early, and that creates all sorts of trouble for us, for them, and for our data. So universal design isn't something you do at the tail end of your transition process. It's something you build in from grades 6 through 12, and I would argue from K through 12 in some ways. From a special ed research base, expertise base, I would just encourage people to consider how it's been designed to address barriers, and very seamlessly so. If you're familiar with high leverage practices, this comes from the University of Florida, some of the research done there, compiling what best practices of special education are. And I listed some of the barriers here, things that well, struggling to keep students focused and engaged. Barrier 2, ensuring students feel connected, that their social and emotional needs are being addressed. Barrier 3, helping students to manage their workload and being overwhelmed. That's huge, right? When you get overwhelmed, you slow down. If you slow down too much, you stop, and then learning stops, so we're in trouble. Barrier 4, supporting students learning so they can process and retain new content. That is so vital, because if it's like a one-off or a glancing view of something, students just do not have the ability to recover from that. They move along to new things, but they don't have the mastery. And barrier 5, addressing students' wide range of skills and experiences using technology for learning. That's pretty obvious because it's an online cloud-based platform, but they actually use technology as they interact with the content. And then facilitating family engagement. This is an important piece. Some of our customers are using virtualjobshadow.com to really engage the student with their parents' awareness, or to have them bring content back to their parent and discuss. And so I think that's something that is an untold story now as we're trying to recover and get our equilibrium during the pandemic, because parents are vital in education and they're so important as to what students think about careers and themselves. And so we really want to encourage customers to find those connections with parents and guardians. So this is kind of the elephant in the room, explicit instruction. When it comes to what you can do in terms of the platform and what you do with students, I think people have been challenged in the pandemic to make sure that they can still do explicit instruction. And the research around this, it's in the high leverage practice link there, it's a hot link. But essentially, how can you do it in remote settings? So we pivoted to pandemic pedagogy, we're finding our way, but how can you be sure that you're still doing something that's evidence-based or defensible? And so I would encourage you to look at our platform, maybe in a new light. You can use it to satisfy the high bar of I do, we do, you do. I know it always sounds like Dr. Seuss is teaching, but really I do, we do, you do is the formula that we've used, and it's research based in terms of what's effective instruction for our students. So how do we do I do, we do, you do in terms of a flex lesson? And this might be where I would have you go back in, Karen, in a minute, but flex lessons allow you to do I do, and here's how. When you saw a preview mode, when you looked at a flex lesson, instead of just assigning it, if you looked at it or cloned it to preview it, or like you're going to edit it, when you hit preview mode, it comes up as the student view. So if you were on a Zoom call with a class or a student or a group of students, you could launch a preview mode of a flex lesson. And what you're doing there is the I do. You're modeling for the students how you would actually go in and take the assessment. In fact, Karen, what you did today was an I do, in certain ways, but you would do it at a very granular level. Then, of course, what's we do? You could do a we do guided practice where students are given time with you on the call, then to go into what you've just previewed and actually start to build, complete assignments or to do the work. Then finally, you do, where you let them have complete ownership and complete the assignment themselves. I understand that you have students, mild, moderate, severe. By and large, our platform is highly suited for students' mild, moderate disability. That is important to know, but you can still take the platform and push the envelope with flex lessons to what your students can do. And I say flex means also like, the muscle, flexing the muscle, but also stretching. So you can be flexible in how you assign content, external links, video, anything else you would want to provide for a student, you could link it into a flex lesson. So Career Central, how do you differentiate or do explicit instruction with Career Central? Essentially, you do the same thing. I do modeling, you think aloud and do a walkthrough for students to show them how to explore. You guide their practice, let them do it, but you walk along with them and have them kind of do it with you. And then examples, you can also record yourself. If you wanted to get really creative, you could do a walkthrough where you record yourself. That way, they always have that to go back to as a link if you post that in the flex lesson. But you also have it for yourself, because then you've covered how to do the instruction, and you can always push that back out for someone who needs it. So these are examples, and I'll give you a couple more, but I probably will go a little faster so we have time for questions and answers at the end. So the I do, we do, you do, and how it helps. I just want to spell this out. You giving cues to students gives them the ability then to see what's important. You pre-teach key vocabulary, schema. Students who do not have categories for the world of work, or if they don't have understanding, where prior knowledge is kind of gappy, that's not their fault. It's our job to help build their schema so they have places to sort and to attach new learning. And it helps you with the big picture of instructional flow. Chunking, breaking it down. This is a great example, but I'll just say here's 3 or 4 things that we help break down the learning for students. Cover letter builder, resume letter builder, career videos, specific careers, building a custom flex lesson playlist. These are important ways in the platform that you as a special educator could go in and design instruction. And how it helps them know what to pay attention to and give them the right amount of content. Helps build in efficiencies because you can easily use a pre-built clone or tweak something. Easy to differentiate, and of course, you can meet the high bar of specially designed instruction because per student, you can always go back and say, this is how we designed for this particular individual. Schema is helpful for all sorts of things, but I want to also say for high level or critical thinking skills, so often we are guilty, I'm guilty, of just kind of getting the compliance piece done and getting students as much as we can employable. But if we don't pay attention to critical thinking skills, then we're really doing them a disservice and we've set the bar too low. So inside the platform, there's a number of ways where you would pull that out or make that really explicit for the student and document their ability to handle much more critical thinking skills than you would otherwise, and certainly remotely. This is a challenge for us. So with that, I'm sorry for the high level race through some of the things that we think about as far as how you can use virtualjobshadow.com, but I'm sure you have some questions, and I'll turn it over now. Open mic, I think, or the chat box. I'm not sure, Michael, how that's going to work.
So, Steve, there were a couple of questions while we were going through, and I kind of answered while they were asking in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no. One of the questions just asked if instructors are able to access the career inventory results. And just to reiterate, anything a student touches basically is accessible by the instructor. So if they begin a career cluster survey or they begin one of those, you might not be able to see what they've done, halfway through. But once they've finished those assessments, those results are all available to you, regardless of whether you've assigned them or not. They can see them. And the only other question in the chat was about cost, and we're happy to talk with you. There is a link. Steve has some in our slide deck. We'll share at the very end, where you can write to us and get more information. We're happy to do a deeper dive of the demo and talk about, how our cost works and what we can offer with you.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and post that right now, Karen. So I'll share that screen while others may still have questions.
Yeah, guys. And we are set up in meeting style. So if anyone attending would like to unmute themselves, you can, I believe so, if you would like to ask any questions. But before we do that, and to serve as a reminder, while the resources presented today may have been vetted by experts in the field, the South Carolina Department of Education, Office of Special Education Services, in no way requires the use of any of the resources provided, nor their purchase. These resources are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as an endorsement of any views, organization, product, company, or program by the South Carolina Department of Education. Thank you for letting me get through that.
Well done, Michael.
And we will ask people to unmute and see if there's any questions left.
So quiet.
It was such a thorough presentation. There's no
Hopefully
stone was left unturned.
Yeah, if there is someone with a question that's not going to be posted today, that's awesome. I would just encourage people to get their questions answered. One thing that we pledge is to always be building the curriculum. The content enhancement process that we have is pretty robust. And Karen mentioned video content, how we procure it. I'm also over the video production team. And so one thing just to be aware of is that we're actively looking to source video content from within South Carolina. And what that means to you is that as we partner with districts and customers to source the video content, that means we might be going out to employers that are of huge interest to your districts or your region or the entire state. I won't divulge any specifics today, but just know that that is definitely something we are doing. We've been very fortunate. South Carolina is an amazing state, and TASK is an amazing resource for you, as you know already. But we feel like we can do a lot of good in terms of sourcing content that would matter the most to South Carolina, but also to others across the nation as they see those employers featured in our platform. Do you see any questions pop up?
No questions.
Well, it is
Okay.
and that's okay. Yeah. So it's a privilege to have been here to share. I will just say thank you so much. I know that each of you is a highly committed, competent professional trying to solve amazingly complex problems right now. This is like no time. We know that. We just really value your input and insights. If there's something you wish you had learned, or if you said, you know what, I have a question and it kind of errs on the side of I don't see it, you don't have it, that's okay too, because like I said, we're always building the content And if we don't have it and there's a need, we're definitely considering those kinds of features in our platform or content. There's no out of bounds.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you, Stephen and Karen.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
This will conclude today's webinar. We appreciate everyone for attending.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
everybody.